I wanted to find out, can the iPhone 14 Pro be taken seriously as a professional creative tool? Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. So the iPhone 14 Pro, not only is it pretty to look at, you've seen this purple color all over the internet by now, I'm sure, it lives up to the name Pro, and it is the best camera under $1,000, but it has some limitations, and today I want to talk about how pro this camera really is and where those limitations are, and if this is something that I believe you should pick up if you're a beginner or you're someone like me who is using this as a tool in their camera arsenal for creating media for themselves or media for other people. Because this definitely does a lot, but unfortunately it still doesn't do everything. So let's go ahead and start with the positives first. The things that I absolutely love about this new iPhone are the video capabilities. You saw that spec commercial I shot for my brand 1826, which, by the way, we have a new launch live right now. You can go to 1826.com and pick up one of the shirts or the hat I'm wearing right now or the other hat in the video if you liked it. If you don't, just hit the thumbs up button on today's video. It helps out as well. But what I loved about shooting that spec commercial was the cinematic mode in video. There were a couple shots where I was walking behind the subject and it looked like a professional Hollywood shot on a gimbal. My favorite one was definitely when the model, my brother, came off the car and was walking towards me and switched out the hat. And I also love the action mode in video. This allows for handheld, long walking gimbal shots. My favorite ones were of him walking as well as the one of the car driving up. Now, once again, the quality of the video is not the same as you would get from something like a mirrorless camera, but they're good enough, especially if you're creating media simply for the internet, to where people aren't going to really be able to tell the difference. Now, I wanted to push this action mode a little bit farther because when we were out filming that commercial, those shots were planned. We essentially mimicked what you would do with like a Movi Pro or something. So we ended up going to a park nearby and we tried out some more like action parkour type shots where my brother ran and jumped off a tree and I followed him. This is where the action mode really blew me away. I couldn't believe that the camera was able to stabilize these running shots as well as they did. And we also tested it in a similar action scenario where he was dribbling the basketball and I shot it like a first person view of a defender trying to keep up with him. And I was blown away with how stable that footage looked, especially when you view it through the camera. I mean, it's so shaky because I'm just trying to keep up with him, but then the final product, it looked great. And this is why I believe this camera is going to be a game changer for people creating internet type media. You've never been able to do this before. You've never been able to go to the basketball court and record an Instagram reel or a TikTok or a story and have it be this stable and this professional looking. Now, on the photography side of things, I absolutely love the macro capabilities on the iPhone 14 Pro. I did some test shots of some flowers in my kitchen just using natural light, and I was blown away with how good these images looked. I mean, it's crazy that you can get the camera this close to something and it's able to focus and create a macro style image. Now, here is the thing. These images are not the most crisp, which is something I'm going to talk about here in a minute with the things that I dislike about this camera. So when you see these advertisements, that are huge and blown up really far away, you oftentimes don't see the lack of, quality that comes with these images. But nonetheless, it's still very impressive that the camera is able to create macro images like this. Even if they're not the highest quality, they're better than we've ever seen before. Now, I'm going to put a bunch of my test photos up on my website, evanramp.com. You can go to the blog tab and look at them there. And this is a perfect time for me to thank the sponsor on today's video, Squarespace, for making that possible. Squarespace makes it possible for me to run a photography business that also gives value to my audience and my customers. Squarespace allows me to host my website, 1826.com, where I can sell the merchandise, which we just did a photo shoot for. It also allows me to connect with my audience and help them edit their photos in a way similar to mine using my preset module. It also gives me the ability to sell physical products like my photo books as well as photo prints. And if you're someone out there who's more interested in booking photo clients, Squarespace allows clients to contact you directly through the homepage on your website. And if you're someone who's thinking that a website website is overly complicated and you don't have any web design experience, you are in luck because Squarespace is the easiest way to build a website with their drag and drop templates. And I have multiple tutorials on this YouTube channel where I break down how to build a variety of different websites. I'll go ahead and link all those in the description down below. So follow along with one of those tutorials and go to squarespace.com/EvanRamp to start a free trial as you build your site. And when you're ready to sign up, you use code EvanRamp to save 10%. That's squarespace.com/EvanRamp to start a free trial and use code EvanRamp when you're ready to sign up and save 10%. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. So big shout out to Squarespace for sponsoring the video. Now the things that I really dislike about this iPhone 14 Pro. Now we talked a lot about video at the beginning, so I'll save those things for the end. Let's start with photography. And it really hurts me to say this because I absolutely love photography. It's my bread and butter. This thing still kind of sucks for photography. It's getting better, but all the issues that we've had with iPhones in the past persist now. The biggest one being this over sharpened look and this really crunchy highlight look that you get even on your RAW files. I did some comparisons with this phone and my Leica SL2, and it's pretty obvious which images were made on the iPhone. It's definitely better. You know, you're getting to a point now where it's harder to distinguish which is which, especially in ideal lighting conditions, but the minute those lighting conditions get outside of where you would like them to be, you deal with this really crunchy highlight issue, this really over sharpened look, which is obvious on images like this one, where you can see the logo on the back of the hat just doesn't look right, especially compared to the Leica image. And you see this a lot in the highlights as well on people's faces. It seems like highlights are overexposed and it's very difficult to bring them down in post. You don't get the same smooth look that you would get using a real mirrorless or high level camera. And this problem persists also when you use the portrait modes on the camera. The portrait mode on the iPhone works sometimes and sometimes it doesn't work so great, especially when you compare it to a real camera and a real lens. A prime example of this is this photo that I made me holding my iPhone. The two photos are almost indistinguishable. It's really hard to figure out which was made with the phone and which one was made with the camera because it's a very simple shot. The phone is able to figure out where my hand is, figure out the lines on the phone, and blur out that background really well. Now, when you step out of the iPhone's comfort zone and you make a photo that is less than perfect conditions, you find all the issues that portrait mode has. This was so apparent in a test that I did where I was wearing headphones, and you can see that in portrait mode, the iPhone is unable to recognize the headphones against my ears, and you get this blur on the headphones, and it just doesn't look right. Especially when you compare it to a similar photo made with an actual camera, it just looks real, very lifelike. And that's another issue with the iPhone and portrait mode is you get this almost overly digitized look. It almost looks like a caricature of yourself, whereas when you're using a real camera, it feels like a real person, a real portrait, and you have that nice bokeh fall off and not this artificially applied bokeh look that sometimes isn't perfect, like in the example with the headphones. You can go in with the iPhone and adjust the blurriness, so maybe the portrait mode is too much on a particular photo. You can go in after the fact and tone it down, bring it to like f5.6 or something like that, but it kind of defeats the purpose. If you want a really blurry background, the phone needs to be able to recognize where the edges are to that portrait, and unfortunately right now when you step out of those perfect ideal conditions, you don't really get it. So if you're someone who is working primarily in photography, this is probably not going to be the camera for you. It's going to be a long time before we see professional campaigns shot with iPhones. It can happen. It can be on a billboard, but I doubt you're going to see, like an email blast where the entire lookbook is shot on an iPhone 14 Pro. Now, going into the video side of things, the biggest issue I had with the iPhone 14 Pro was the file size and transferring files from the phone to my computer. When you're making short video clips, it's not a big deal. You can airdrop them, but for longer videos that might not be able to be delivered over airdrop, not having an SD card or any type of storage that can be taken out of the phone and applied to a computer or a hard drive is a really big issue. As the quality of video continues to improve on these phones, the files are going to get bigger, and we're reaching this point where it seems like it would make a lot of sense for there to be some type of way to get the files off the iPhone to another device to edit. much quicker. That is everything I liked and disliked about the iPhone 14 Pro. Like I said, I believe this is the best camera for under $1,000 if you fall into the category of people who are going to need all the things that it provides. If you're someone who is primarily working with photography, I don't recommend this. I think a real camera is still the way to go. Even though these are getting a lot better, they're just not there on the photography sides of things just yet.